Shekar, thank you so much for joining me on the Telco AI Deep Dive. I really look forward to talking through with you how Arrcus is thinking about this sort of transformational moment that AI seems to be having. And we're going to talk about the Arrcus Connected Edge for AI solution. But before we get into that, maybe a little more high level as you look at operators in general, operators you maybe are engaged with, and how they are approaching AI, and then how enterprises are also approaching AI. Do you think that our underlying networks, as they are today, and as you expect them to progress over the short term, are going to provide the necessary capabilities, or do you see any potential problem areas?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me here. Always a pleasure talking to you. So fundamentally, I think AI is a sort of a tidal wave that's coming up on us. And I don't believe that the operator environment or the enterprise environment are anywhere close to being prepared for what they need to do in order to consume this in an effective way. My pet peeve is the pendulum in infrastructure always keeps swinging between distributed to consolidated. And so right now it's kind of hanging in a largely consolidated domain. I mean, you've got a lot of hyperscalers. They've got a lot of compute capacity. You've got a good amount of, I would say, concern around GPU capacity and whether that's going to service the need for AI. But my strong belief is that you need an underlying infrastructure that is smart and back to distributed in order to be completely efficient for the deployment of AI. And if you think about it architecturally and just sort of break it up into more, I'd say, training and inference and so on, generally speaking, today's networks are largely a bit more training focused. They're not, in fact, as efficient for taking those trained results, transmitting them, or for doing low latency transformational inferencing at the edges. So to summarize my view, I don't think the enterprises or service providers are prepared. I think the area of where they lack the most is the network. I think the data centers as well as infrastructure capacity that's available today is largely consolidated, and more people are just concerned about how things like high performance computing, et cetera, can be used. Whereas I feel like we should go from this not so distributed, not so smart networks that exist today to a fully smart and distributed network architecture.
Okay, so that segues directly into this next question I had for you. And, basically this trend towards distribution of compute, it's been a talking point for a number of years, but in terms of actual deployment of infrastructure, I'd say relatively nascent still from the operator side of things. But, the goal is to get that compute power out to the RAN sites, out to the enterprise edge. And then there's also this recognition that multi-cloud is how most big enterprises are probably going to approach their computing needs for the foreseeable future, at least. So it does feel like there is a big opportunity for operators as they go through the process of building out their edges to put that compute overhead in there to really be prepared to capitalize on Gen AI, both for their own uses and for their customers. Edge inferencing seems like, in an optimistic scenario, you could say that might be a big deal for 5G, but just frame it up for us. How do you see 5G and AI playing together over time?
Yeah, so first, let me start by saying that today, largely the comms world, the 5G world, and then the cloud world and the compute infrastructure world are still pretty distinct, separate, and disparate worlds. Okay. There's very little available in order to kind of bring these things together. So if I were to start my prescriptive soapbox here for operators, I would start by saying, look, first bring your 5G network closer to the IP network. Bring IP level programmability into your 5G network and do this in a way in which your infrastructure is no longer the sort of rigid Fort Knox of communications, but you become more cloud-like in your architecture. So that's sort of step one. Step two, as you rightfully alluded, is recognizing that the world in compute in particular went from on-prem to a lot of public to hybrid to now multi-cloud. And so trying to get a step up on that and trying to kind of get this so that they are on the front foot forward is a great opportunity for these operators. Historically, they have, I think, generally speaking, kind of given up and said, hey, we're no longer going to be cloud providers because that game is just not ours. Then you saw some partnerships build up where there was a bit of outsourcing, a bit of capacity creation, a bit of leasing out cell towers and points of like physical capacity to hyperscalers from the operators, but you didn't see anything very innovative. I think right now there's an opportunity to innovate in this space, to truly take a multi-cloud fabric, overlay that on top of hyperscaler capacity, and then make the operator the delivery vehicle for that sort of multi-cloud network capacity to enterprise customers in particular. And then the last thing, so to recap, I would say basically you start by bringing 5G and IP networks closer together. You adopt a multi-cloud stance to your network. And then finally, you take and leverage your strength at the edges. So by design, the operators have a distributed network, and you can sort of take that distribution all the way down to the cellular phone, to every individual mobile endpoint, or for that matter, for fixed telephony that a lot of people have access to, etc. If you take that architecture, it's a fundamentally distributed architecture. And going back to my previous point, an application like AI, when it comes out and tests the capacity limits of everything, from processors to GPUs to what is happening within data centers to what is happening at the endpoints and edges, this sort of an distributed architecture will become a strength and an asset. And if operators can therefore take 1, 2, and 3 and put them together, they have really the golden ticket for becoming successful here. And so I would urge them to go and take advantage of that in this age of AI and become the AI cloud of choice, if you will.
You know, a lot of the sort of disconnects that you mentioned around the need for a unifying fabric that connects these different networks at the edge, at the data center, at the enterprise, you know, that predates AI. And I know that doesn't predate AI. I'm going to correct myself in real time. It predates the hype we're seeing around AI, and it predates the sort of opportunism we're seeing in the telecom space around AI. But a problem that Arrcus has been working on for some time. So maybe you can give us just a little bit of background on the company, and then I'd like to learn more about the Arrcus Connected Edge for AI that you all announced at Mobile World Congress in Las Vegas. It's all very, very relevant to what we're talking through here.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so just maybe an introduction to the company. So think about Arrcus as a networking disruptor where our innovation is in software in the networking space, working with a number of different hardware form factors, etc. But I like to think about Arrcus very similar to what we did with VMware in the compute domain. And as you know, I was there at VMware for several years. So coming to Arrcus, I look at this as a play where we can and are creating fundamentally a common software abstraction across multiple different pools of network capacity. These could be on-premise in the form of routers and switches. These could be in the cloud in the form of hyperscaler networks. And they could be essentially in the core of data centers. They could be at the edges, and they could be within the 5G network landscape of what carriers and operators are deploying inside their networks. So there isn't, in fact, any other technology or, software or hardware that has this sort of universal capability of overlaying this as a network fabric. Now, this is super important because when we look at our combination of customers today, whether they are enterprise cloud or telecom service provider, in each instance, we have now been able to stitch together for them a single network architecture that allows them to handle multiple use cases, handle switching and routing at the same time, have a multi-cloud networking capability that allows them to go and touch or connect with multiple hyperscalers, and do what I started this conversation talking about, which is blend the IP network with the 5G network. Because if you think about Arrcus's operating system called ArcOS, and you place that, let's say, at a PE router, that by design is now bringing the GTP and IP networks together, and it brings programmability to that architecture. So somewhat fortuitously, we think this is just right place, right time for what we have done, because much like you said, we predate the current hype in AI. Our company was founded in 2016. And so we've been doing this for a long time. We've been working with operators, cloud providers, as well as enterprises. But now we find that the technology that we have created is ideal for the expansion of this consolidated network to a distributed architecture. Whether you're trying to optimize within a single data center using better top-of-rack switching or spines or leaves, or whether you're trying to interconnect large GPU farms together, or extend them to your 5G network, multi-cloud network, or to your edge, it's one single operating platform from Arrcus that enables our customers to do that. We have further baked in innovative technology that does things like ingress optimization for traffic. We've done things like priority flow control. We are working on things related to egress optimization based on costs. And so at the router level, when you think about technology like this, it's like the tweaks we made at the hypervisor level inside VMware. So similarly, we're taking an approach similar to that at this network operating system or NOS level within Arrcus. Let me pause there because I could go on for at least a couple more hours about what we do at Arrcus.
When you look at how your operator customers and even your cloud and your enterprise customers are thinking about AI, I know it's use case driven because they're all facing similar problems that are, basically around cut OpEx and better monetize technology investments, likely through kind of new service pathways. But do you see any specific use cases that operators are in a position to action in the near term that are AI enabled? Back to the top of our conversation, you made it quite clear that you don't think things are necessarily where they need to be in order to support this vision for AI, but what are the kind of short-term gains that you think are tangible, are attainable?
Yeah, so first I would say some of these are probably not even as much AI enabled, but I think they can be accelerated by AI. So things like just offering up a multi-cloud networking service, as an example, is to me something that has benefits well beyond or even before AI. But I think operators have probably not been as focused on doing that. And I think largely it's because they're still caught up in this consumer voice and data traffic that they are largely all focused on. So things like that, I think, can be easily and quickly monetizable services, and technologies like ourselves are available today to enable them to doing that. Then when you look at AI, concepts that operators have been talking about. So for example, if you take a look at network slicing, there's been a lot of conversation on network slicing, how it's going to be offered and what it's going to enable people to do. But when you simply now start talking about the traffic volumes and the data volumes that are going to traverse the networks based on AI, and as I said, both between training and inferencing, then the idea that you can now have the ability to have quality of service there to essentially, like I was describing earlier, route traffic differently based on whether you want to optimize for cost or performance or latency. These are all now available as technologies for the operators to do. And so to me, AI really gets interpreted in two ways. One is how can people use AI to their benefit in order to optimize their networks, or for that matter, just get better services delivered. But the more interesting problem to me is that everybody is doing a bit of a sky is falling right now in terms of the volumes and capacities that are going to be required by the global consumption of AI over the course of the next, whatever, 5 years, decade. And they're all sort of running scared, saying, hey, we don't know what to do. And this is where I think the operators can take this as an opportunity, start releasing functionality on top of their networks that are immediately monetizable. And then over time, at least my dream scenario is that some subset of them do become the foundational construct for AI clouds, where it's not just about building large GPU farms. It's about how those GPU farms are interconnected. It's about how those GPU farms are then extended to the edges of the network. And that is what the operators can then do in concert with technology providers like ourselves, as well as, of course, processor vendors like NVIDIA, Broadcom, Intel, etc.
Shekar, usually when you and I talk, it's you doing a good job allaying my cynical concerns about the future of operators. I think the last time we talked, it was sort of under the phrasing of can they successfully pivot from telco to techco and actually grow, actually do something that's new and different. You know, you mentioned network slicing. It seems like today, as we kind of approach this midpoint in the 5G cycle, that a lot of operators, they seem stuck. They're not making any money. They're not really leveraging the networks that they've built to the highest and best use. So, you know, on-demand slicing, we've heard a lot about it, hadn't seen much of it. This just idea of becoming cloud native and fully embracing automation, it's a technology issue, but maybe more so an organizational issue, a workflow issue. But I guess, you know, to contextualize it in AI, it seems like operators might need AI to kind of continue on this path with 5G. And then if they can do that, then they can also use AI to create these new revenue opportunities. But just, I don't know, back to the kind of same general question, do you think they can do it?
So I think my answer probably is also going to be a bit similar, which is I absolutely think they have the raw materials to be able to do it. I think they're always dogged by some amount of other factors that come in the way. I mean, their marketing prowess, their sort of sales capacity to do something that sells something beyond just voice and data and network, basic network services, their ability to operate in a service-oriented manner, their ability to have a P&L that actually contemplates something that is more as a service like. So these are all factors that I do think that they need to get better at. However, that said, I always try to look at it a bit more starkly and say, look, it's now or never. And I think the idea that the operators can eke out an existence by just sort of shaving off the last, whatever, fraction of a penny on every call or data transmission contract, prepaid, postpaid, etc., with consumer subscribers, I think that has outlived its usefulness. I think you can't go from 5G to 6G to 7G and hope that you can keep making profits on that business model. I think this is an inflection point, and at this point, I would actually hope sincerely that some subset of operators take this upon themselves to say, okay, I'm going to go bring my 5G and IP networks together. I'm going to become multi-cloud. I'm going to go in and boldly proclaim that I am the network for AI, and I'm going to actually use my slicing technology for the benefit of that AI, and I'm going to work with some of the AI leaders in technology to be able to create and deliver services that enable enterprises to consume that. These may be directly from operator to the enterprise, or maybe there is a a third party involved in the process. One way or the other, I think they need to get there. So to summarize, I'd say I'm an optimist, as I have been before. However, operators have not been, I'd say, the first to take this up and actually go and drive this to success. And I'm hoping that they actually do it this time, because there's yet another killer app, if you will, that is on the horizon, if not already here. So.
Excellent, Shekar. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join the Telco AI Deep Dive and tell us about how Arrcus is thinking about this opportunity. It's great to catch up with you.
Likewise, Sean. Thank you for having me here.